Welcome to our channel, where each week we bring you new psychological thriller stories. This week's story is called The Cage Works Both Ways, and it's written by a writer. Let's begin. The first sound I heard after 23 years of silence wasn't birdsong, laughter, or music. It was my son, David's voice, calling me a worthless burden to his wife. I smiled when I entered the kitchen. 2 hours later, pretending I hadn't heard a word. That's when I realized my family had no idea what was coming for them. 3 weeks earlier, I'd been given a second life. Dr. Martinez at St. Mary's Hospital performed what he called a miracle surgery experimental, risky, but my only hope. 23 years ago, a drunk driver had left me deaf and widowed in one single night. My husband, Robert, died instantly, and I was left to raise David in silence. I learned sign language. I learned to smile when people grew tired of repeating themselves. I lived quietly, alone, and I saved every penny for the dream that one day, somehow, I might hear again. The surgery had only a 30% chance of success. My son hated the idea. Mom, you're 68? Why risk it? But I refused to give up hope. And when I woke in recovery and heard the nurse's footsteps, then her cheerful voice, I broke down crying for the first time in over 2 decades. The world had sound, and Dr. Martinez told me something astonishing. My hearing wasn't he just restored, it was sharper than normal. My brain had overcompensated all those years, meaning every whisper, every mutter, every secret conversation. I could hear it all. So I made a plan. Instead of telling my family, I'd surprise them. I wanted to see the joy on their faces when I spoke to them for the first time in years. But what I discovered was not joy. It was betrayal. At first, it was little things. Jennifer, my daughter, spoke with fake sweetness when she knew I was watching, but her tone dropped the second she thought I couldn't hear. David complained about me being in the way. The grandchildren barely looked at me, treating me like a piece of furniture in their house. Then one night, I lay in the guest bedroom and overheard the truth through the thin walls. Jennifer, on the phone? Brookside Manor has an opening. If we move quickly, Eleanor can be settled there by summer. Brookside Manor. A place infamous for warehousing the elderly. A place where people went to fade away. And then I heard the worst part. They planned to sell my house to house where I raised David, the house I'd built a life in for quick cash. David even told his business partner, my savings and property would cover my care for 8 to 10 years. My life's work, my sacrifices, reduced to a financial plan for their convenience. They didn't just want to put me away. They wanted to erase me! 4 days, I kept smiling, nodding, playing the role of the grateful, deaf old woman. But inside, I was listening, recording every word in my memory. And by Friday morning, I had made my decision. If my family saw me as a burden, then I would teach them just how heavy I could become. Because the one thing they had forgotten, I had heard everything, and I was going to use that gift to destroy their little plan. That night, while Jennifer slept upstairs, I sat at her computer and opened her emails. And what I found made my blood run cold. Not only were they planning to take my house, but they were already spending money that wasn't theirs. Vacations, renovations, a whole new life funded by the theft of mine. They thought they had caged me, but I was about to show them a cage works both ways. The first sound I heard after 23 years of silence was my son calling me a burden. The last sound he'll ever expect is me laughing when I finally take everything back. Because now, my so-called family doesn't realize it, but the game has already shifted. They thought they were planning my future. What they didn't know is that I was planning theirs. That night, while Jennifer slept upstairs, I sat in her office chair, scrolling through her open emails. She had folders labeled Brookside, Realtors, even interior design. She wasn't just planning to move me out, she was already redesigning my home. New countertops, open floor plan. Photos of expensive furniture bookmarked in her browser. I also found something else. Their finances, maxed out credit cards, a failing accounting practice, debt collectors circling. And I realized without my money, without my house, they were ruined. So instead of confronting them, I smiled. I closed the laptop and went back to bed, heart racing. If they wanted a performance, I'd give them the role of a lifetime. Over breakfast the next morning, I signed slowly to David, asking about his work. He exaggerated his lip movements, pretending I couldn't hear his muttered sighs about me wasting his time. Perfect. He was still convinced I was deaf. That afternoon, I visited the food bank I'd volunteered at for years. Old friends greeted me with hugs and chatter, and none of them knew about my surgery yet. I told them everything. The miracle, the betrayal, every word my family had said behind closed doors. And then I asked for their help. One of the volunteers, Margaret, was a retired paralegal. She nearly dropped her coffee when I explained what David and Jennifer were plotting. Eleanor, they're setting you up for guardianship fraud. But if you've got proof, you can turn this around fast. So, with her guidance, I began documenting, recording conversations on my phone, forwarding Jennifer's emails to a secure account, collecting every detail of their lies. The real heartbreak came with my grandchildren. Michael was suspicious. He asked Jennifer more than once if putting me in a home was really necessary. Sarah, though, she was being poisoned. Jennifer told her I was too fragile, that I needed constant care. So one evening, when Sarah came downstairs for a snack, I signed to her quietly. But this time, I spoke as well. Sarah, I can hear you. Her eyes widened. The phone dropped from her hand. I explained everything: the surgery, the recovery, and most importantly, the betrayal. At first, she didn't believe me. But then I played her a recording, Jennifer's voice on the phone, saying I'd be easier to manage once she's settled at Brookside. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. She hugged me tightly, whispering, I'm so sorry, Grandma. I didn't know. And just like that, I had my first ally inside the house. By the end of the week, Jennifer was bragging to her mother that everything was almost arranged. David was crunching numbers, talking about how long my savings would sustain the family. They didn't realize their words weren't just bouncing off deaf ears anymore. They were evidence. On Sunday, I asked Sarah to drive me to church. Instead, we drove to a lawyer's office, recommended by Margaret. There, I handed over a folder with printed emails, bank records, and recordings. The lawyer leaned back in his chair, whistling low. Mrs. Sinclair, your son and daughter-in-law are setting themselves up for criminal charges. Fraud, financial exploitation, possibly even elder abuse. And that's when the idea struck me. I didn't just want to stop them, I wanted to teach them. The following Friday, Jennifer returned from Pilates, smug as ever. She didn't no ID, already met with the realtor Sheedy, contacted and canceled the listing. She didn't know I'd frozen my accounts, moved my savings into a trust for my grandchildren, and transferred ownership of my house to myself with a legal block against unauthorized sale. And she didn't know that the lawyer had prepared a little surprise for her and David. That evening, over dinner, I kept my face blank as they performed their usual theater. Then David finally dropped the act. Mom! He said, we've been talking, and we think it's time to start planning long-term care for you. Brookside has. That's when I cut him off. For the first time in 23 years, I spoke to my son without hesitation. Brookside Manor, David. Or should I call it what it really is, the prison you were planning to dump me in while you stole my house and my savings? The fork fell from Jennifer's hand. David's face turned the color of ash. And then I pulled out my phone and pressed play. Their voices filled the room. Every whisper, every scheme, every plan. The silence that followed was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. Within a month, David and Jennifer were facing legal investigations for attempted financial exploitation. I stayed in my own home with Sarah and Michael visiting me often, this time out of love, not obligation. Dr. Martinez had given me back my hearing, but my family's betrayal had given me something even more powerful. A voice. and I was never going to be silent again. And that's our story for today. It's a story about the power of resilience and the strength of a mother's love. Do you think Eleanor got her revenge? Let us